Hi, this is Sean D'Souza, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation Podcast. This podcast isn't some magic trick about how to work less. Instead, it's about how to really enjoy the work that you do and to enjoy your vacation time. Hi, it's Sean D'Souza. It's 5 p.m. here in Auckland, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation. This is part 2 of how to create your info product using a client. Now, when I say using a client, what I mean is there are times when you're going to use the client to build that info product, but there are times when you have to leave that client out of the entire proceedings. In the last episode, we looked at the factor of when to leave them out and when to get them in. So if you haven't listened to the last one, then you might want to listen to that one. If not, you can just jump in and start with this one itself. So this episode is part 2, and it's about how to use the target profile to create versions and satellite products. Now, you might not be very familiar with what this concept of versions and satellite products are all about. But that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to explain to you, how to create these satellite products, these versions of your product. And in today's episode, we'll look at how to use the target profile to create versions. Most people have never heard of the Knoll brothers, but they've certainly heard of the program that the Knoll brothers invented. That program was Photoshop. Photoshop was developed initially in 1987 by Thomas and John Knoll, and it wasn't a sophisticated program like the modern version. Back then, it wasn't even called Photoshop. It was named Image Pro. It was only when the Knoll brothers decided to sell the program in 1988 that they changed that name to Photoshop. It's not much of a story. No one was really interested in the program, except for Adobe. Adobe saw the potential and purchased the wholesale rights, and by 1990, the first version of Photoshop was released. Today, Photoshop has gone through thousands of changes and 27 versions. Every time a version appeared on the market, 2 sets of customers bought the product, new clients and existing ones. And in that version history is a lesson for almost all of our information products. Now, if you were to say, who builds Photoshop? Well, obviously the programmers build Photoshop. But then you have to ask another question. Who comes up with the endless suggestions for the improvement of the program? And a large portion comes from the users themselves. They pitch in, they want Photoshop to be improved this way and that way, and so they come up with all these ideas that eventually become a new version. Now, of course, we're in 2017, and Photoshop doesn't have this version model. They have a subscription model in place. All the upgrades are automatic, but for at least 20 years or more, existing users contributed. They contributed to the information that will make up the new Photoshop. A similar concept can be used to sell your own info products. You can use the version model. Now, it's not common in the information products world to think of books or videos or courses as they do in the software world. Most information product creators, they write a book or they create a course, and then it stays in its original form. And yet your target profile, your client, is always looking for an improvement version. At Psychotactics, we have created newer versions of info products as often as we possibly can. As you're probably aware, the article writing course is new in version 2.0. So is the first 50 words course, and the brain audit, which is our main product that clients have to buy before they really get into Psychotactics. It was released back in 2002. And since then, we've had version after version after version of the brain audit. Bear in mind that not all courses, not all info products need constant revision. But instead of simply dashing off into creating yet another information product, you might want to stop and look at versions. You might want to take a look at how versions will help you sell info products to an existing as well as a new audience. And this is very cool because you would have thought, people have bought the brain audit, they've bought the article writing course, they've bought all of this stuff. There is no need for them to buy it again. But versions, that's what Photoshop teaches us. It teaches us that people will continue to buy the existing product if you can upgrade that product. See, what you're creating is a market which technically should be dead. A market where clients have already bought that product. They would not buy that product again. But when you create versions, something magical happens. You get existing users and new users. Listening to the target profile can also help you create more in-depth versions of your product. Take the article writing course, for instance. It's an extremely comprehensive course. Clients love it. They really do. At first, the course existed as a standalone. But the client decided that they wanted more in-depth sub-courses. So what do I mean by this? When we look at a topic like headline writing, that is already covered in the article writing course. But now we have a separate 8-week headline course. The opening of the article is another example. We call it the first 50 words. That is also part of the article writing course. But now it is also a separate 8-week intensive course. So what you're learning from this article writing example is that even when you have what seems to be a complete info product, clients are still willing to buy in-depth versions of those products. To make this clearer, let's break up the article writing course. Let's break it up into components so you can see what are those components. And we won't do all the components, we'll just do some of the components. So the article writing course has headlines, the first 50 words, connectors, subheads, sandwiching, objections. There are lots of components like that. And they all comprise a single article. That's how your article is constructed. All of these are components of the course itself. But when you look at that list, every component could then possibly become a separate, a more detailed information product, a more detailed information course. Some of them might be shorter, some of them may take fewer pages in the book, but they all have the propensity to break off from the mothership, that mothership being article writing or the article writing course. And therefore, they become satellites of their own. And what clients tend to want is more of the same good stuff that you've been putting out. So if you go into these satellite info products, clients are more than happy to buy into your offering. We know this to be true because of what we see at Psychotactics. A client will do the headlines course, then they'll do the article writing course, and then the first 50 words course. Or they may start with the article writing course, then move to the headlines course. You'd think that there would be a logical progression. It doesn't have to be a logical progression. You can do a very intensive detailed course and then go to a satellite course, or you could start with a satellite course and go to the detailed course. That's not what I'm saying here. That's the way clients do it. That's the way they find it very useful. That's the way I would find it very useful. But what's happening here is this thought that goes through our head, which is this going to cannibalize the main course? Is this going to cannibalize the article writing course? And we know that's not true. We know that when clients do the article writing course, they also do the satellite courses. They also do the headlines course. They also do the first 50 words course. So we can have these satellite courses going on at the very same time, or in the very same year at least, and clients will take time off to do all of these three things. When I say three things, in this case, I'm talking about the first 50 words course, the headlines course, and the article writing course. And you can do this for all your courses, all your information products. So no, it doesn't cannibalize the main course. And this concept of satellites applies to any sort of information products, whether audio or video or text. And you know this to be true because of the music industry. At some point, we've all bought music in some shape or some form. Some of us may have had the pleasure of buying cassette tapes or CDs or DVDs and then signed up to Spotify or Pandora or Apple. And the fact that we already have access to all the music doesn't stop us from listening to it on the radio. It doesn't stop us from going onto YouTube. If the musician rolls into town, we're likely to pony up anywhere between $100 to $500 for concert tickets. In short, all the versions, all the satellite products, as it were, all that stuff works together. Nothing cannibalizes the other stuff. And your target profile, your client, wants you to create updated or at least deeper content on the very same topic. The target profile, that client, is a great boon for your business. And this is why we keep saying target profile, because it's one person. If you have a target audience, you can't really do that much. If you have some persona stuff that you've just made up, again, you're just stabbing at the wind, as it were. You don't know what's happening. However, the moment you have a real client in front of you, you're able to do so much more. And that's because a real client complains, a real client gives feedback, a real client buys your information products. Even so, a target profile can be a distraction, as we've learned. We've learned that there are places where the target profile is very useful and at other times you just want them to stay away. And this brings us to the end of this podcast. So let's summarize what we've learned in both the episodes. What have we learned so far? The Knoll brothers, John and Thomas Knoll, we learned that they invented Photoshop. That's cool, isn't it? But besides that very important point, we also learned how to create your information product and why you need to leave the target profile out of it. There are times when you might want to include the target profile, but that product might end up being too me too much like the products that are on the shelf. To go rogue, you might need to sit down all by yourself and create an information product that is based on how you see the client getting from A to B. To put this fact into perspective, think about Photoshop itself. No target profile created that program. Instead, the Knoll brothers worked out what was needed and they got the clients from point A to point B. And that's how they generated that amazing piece of software. The Photoshop Me Too products are constrained. They're largely constrained by the boundaries of Photoshop itself. In short, the Me Too were more a sort of target profile driven info product, while Photoshop was the creator's dream. The target profile is not completely excluded from the creation process though. Once you've gone through the early stages and you have your content and you've done your drafts, your early drafts, at that point the target profile becomes very useful. So what I tend to do is I tend to send the draft to the target profile to get their feedback. And that feedback is so important because the target profile will always come back with that feedback and they'll say, you haven't explained this stuff, you have left out this stuff, you need more examples, you need more detail. That target profile will give me that very pertinent and often very persistent feedback. However, the target profile does a limited job in that creation of that content, creating that info product. So what we have to do is largely, I would suggest you keep them out of it until you have done with your drafts. But there is a second stage, and this is part 2 of the podcast. And this is where the target profile needs to be in from the very start. We know that the target profile shouldn't be involved in the early stages of creating the product. The content, that part you don't want the target profile in. However, in the page creation, that's the sales page or the pre-sale process, that's where the target profile is invaluable. Because you get to know very early what motivates the client. What is the main problem that they're facing? Do you know that? Well, that's what they do. They tell you. Once you have the biggest problem clear, you can then create your sales page and tackle that problem, tackle that issue. The target profile interview becomes so invaluable when you're in the sales or the pre-sale phase. To understand more about how the target profile plays its role, you need to pick up your copy of the Brain Audit. You need to read the chapter on the target profile and do it. Even if you've done it before, do it again. So, two things. The first thing is you want to leave the target profile out when you're creating the content. You want to bring them in when you're creating the sales page. The third thing is the satellite or the versions. And the target profile plays a significant role in the version or satellite product creation. Users generally want a sort of upgrade. So they'll ask you to fix this and fix that in your info product. And most info product creators nod glibly and they do nothing. They simply don't bother to create a newer version of the info product. Admittedly, not all products need an upgrade. And any sort of update can be as much, if not more work than the existing products. Even so, you're then able to sell an upgraded product to an existing as well as newer clients. So it's like double the audience, kind of. Not exactly, but it feels like double the audience. Remember, the existing clients have already bought your product. So when you have that version, it's like they're buying it for the second time. And this is not a con game. They enjoy it. They are finding new depth in the way you've presented it in the next version. Just like you would do with Photoshop. When you bought the new version, you don't think, oh, this is a ripoff. So you get existing clients and you get new clients. The other aspect is the creation of satellite info products. Just because you have a complete and detailed info product, it doesn't mean that clients don't want more detail. This is when you create a satellite info product. The article writing course is a good example. It has satellite courses. And even the Brain Audit has satellite products. So we have products like uniqueness that come from the Brain Audit. We have testimonials that come from the Brain Audit. These are satellite products. In short, the user is asking you to create info products. They're asking you to create products that help them understand your information differently or in a more intermediate format, more detailed format. Paying attention to the target profile makes for very loyal clients. It makes for substantial profits from an existing clientele. Instead of scrambling all over the place trying to get new clients all the time, you can use this concept of satellites. You can use this concept of versions to run an extremely profitable business. So now that we know all that we know, what's the one thing that you can do? Now, there is no one thing in this episode. This is all about stages. You need to write the product that you want to write, and this will help the customer to go from point A to point B. Point 2 is that once you've finished, have a target profile review, get the feedback, and then make changes. And point 3 is interview the target profile. This is very important when you're creating sales pages. Find out the problems that they're having and then use those problems on the sales page. And once they tell you what solution they're looking for, they'll often tell you what that solution looks like. You can go through the objections. They will tell you what objections they have. They will tell you how to overcome those objections. They will even give you a dummy testimonial and tell you what it looks like. So you know what the endpoint should look like. risk reversal, uniqueness. The target profile does all that stuff. So you can use it for your sales page. And these are the stages. Then as you get through your info products, you might think, well, we're done. We've already written the brain audit. What is there to be done? Well, we started with version 1, we're version 2, version 3, version 3.2. So that's it. And also the satellite products. So I've gone over this over and over again, and I hope you enjoyed it because this now brings us to the end of this podcast. Let's go over to Psychotactics Land. What's happening in Psychotactics Land? What's happening in Psychotactics Land? 21st of July. 21st of July is when 35 copies of the Info Products course will be released. These are home study versions, self-study, and only 35 copies. I know it's home study. We should be selling 2,000 copies. No, we're selling 35. To get to the home study version, you have to go to Psychotactics Information Products, put yourself on the waiting list. Yes, we have barriers in place. That's how we work. You can get there, put yourself on the waiting list. Renuka will go through the list and you'll be given an intimation when the product is available. You have to be eligible before you can get it. So she will go through that and you will get information. Then on the 21st of July, you'll get a chance to buy the product. You'll be given a link, and that's how it works. So that's the Information Products home study. It's very good. Shows you how to create an information product that gets customers to get to the endpoint. And when they get to the endpoint, they come back for more. That's how a meal is created. You create a great meal, they come back the second time, second great meal, third time. You don't have to go out there and get millions of customers. You can work with your existing customers. That's the principle that we've used at Psychotactics, which is why you don't find us all over the place. We're not famous as we should be or could be. We just do our own little thing, and clients keep coming back, and we don't have to do all the hoopla that you see in the marketing world. So that's the first home study that's available. The second one is available on the 18th of September, and that is the article writing course, the home study version. Again, you have to be on the list, so go to psychotactics.com, look for the article writing course, get yourself on the waiting list, and if you want both the courses, that's fine. If you want one of them, pick either the Information Products or the article writing course, and that will get you set for the rest of the year so that, yes, this is about 2018. I know we're just in mid-2017, but it's all the preparation that you do now that pays off later. So that's the article writing course and the Information Products course. Also join us in 5000 BC because a lot of people think, I don't have an idea. I don't have a business. Well, I don't think that it's going to just show up where you're sitting at home or in your office. It's not going to just show up. What you've got to do is you have to have a temperament for business, and you're going to need to expose yourself a bit. I know it feels very insecure. And if you are like most of 5000 BC members, which are mostly introverts, it feels very unsure to say, here is my idea, or I don't have an idea, and can you help me? And we will help you, but you have to keep coming back. Just getting more information is not going to help you. You know that. You've got truckloads of information already. What you need is someone to be there to help you through the stages, for you to come up with an idea, for people to go, no, that's not such a great idea. And for you to come back and back and back. And this is the temperament that you need to have as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, as a freelancer. It doesn't matter what you call it, but this is the kind of temperament that you need to have. It's not this press a button and everything happens kind of business, because that is what you get sold. That's not the reality of things. And you know this to be true. No one needs to tell you this stuff. So join us in 5000 BC, come back day after day, work through it, and yes, there's also a load of information out there. And when you ask questions, I write whole answers to your question, like sometimes 5,000 words, responding to their question. Sometimes it's just 200 words or 100 words. It's a nice community. It's a very introverted, kind, friendly community. I think you'll enjoy it. It's almost 6 p.m. here in Auckland. It's time to go out and get some Thai food and have some drinks with some friends. I'll say bye for now. Bye-bye. Still listening? I started using Photoshop way back. Back then it was very difficult to get a computer. It was not difficult, it was very expensive to get a computer. And so I had to go to the bank and I had to get my father to guarantee the loan, which was considerable because I was still in university, but I wanted to buy the computer. And so he guaranteed the loan, and then I paid off that loan bit by bit. But while that was happening, I ran into CorelDRAW and I ran into Photoshop. In fact, I did a very early barter with this company called PhotoSoft. And I have to say, I was very glad that they did that barter because on top of paying the loan, I didn't have the money to do Photoshop or to learn Photoshop. And there was this guy, C.P. Nair, and he really helped me with Photoshop and with CorelDRAW. And I have to say that if it weren't for those early days, it might have been much harder later on. And one of the primary uses for Photoshop, for me at least, was just to give different variations to clients. Because I used to draw these cartoons and then say it was a dinosaur and they wanted the dinosaur in purple and pink and blue and green, whatever. And they wanted to see how it would look like. So normally I'd go to the photocopy center and take 10 photocopies and then paint every single one of them. And then Photoshop came along and I could just do everything in minutes. And so that was a really great experience. But the second memory I have of Photoshop is when I started up my own office and I had staff. And July was always a crappy month. I mean, July, I don't know what would happen in July, but we'd never have any work. And I'd complain to my mother and say, we don't have any work in July. And she'd go, you never have any work in July. So anyway, I got over that pretty quickly. And we had spent time fiddling around with Photoshop, just turning off the toolbar and then seeing what the letter A did or the letter B did. And so we got very quick, all of us, we got very quick at Photoshop and we learned to use it without the toolbar. So you get a screen that's completely blank. And to this day, I can work much of that screen because of what we learned back then. So this is just the journey of Photoshop. And when I told you that story about the Knoll brothers, I have to say they personally changed my life in a big way. And so thank you, both of you, the Knoll brothers, even though you may never hear this. Thank you very much. And I'll say bye for now. Bye-bye.